Hey there, storytellers and dreamers. Welcome back to the channel where fairy tales aren't quite what you remember. Today, we're diving into a world of enchantment and intrigue, where classic fairy tales get a fresh, unexpected twist. Imagine stepping into the forest of your favorite bedtime stories, but discovering it hides secrets you've never heard before. We've got two incredible tales lined up for you. One cozy and heartwarming, the other adventurous and mysterious. So get comfy, maybe grab a cup of tea, and let's journey together through the magic and mayhem of the unknown. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more reimagined tales, and let us know in the comments what your favorite childhood story was. All right, ready to dive in? Let's get to it. Once upon a twist, a cozy tale, deep within the enchanted forest of Elderwilda, where the leaves whispered secrets to the wind and mushrooms glowed faintly with their own inner light. There stood a small cottage unlike any other. Its roof was patched together with shimmering dragon scales. Its walls were woven from living vines, and the chimney puffed out smoke that sometimes smelled of cinnamon and other times popcorn. It belonged, of course, to Granny Gretel, the once famous heroine who had allegedly outsmarted a witch in an oven long, long ago. But what people didn't know, what no one bothered to ask, was that the oven's story wasn't quite the whole truth. And tonight, as Granny Gretel sat by the hearth, rocking in her creaky chair, gazing at the pan filled with buttered almond cookies, she felt ready to share her twisted tale with her favorite guest. "Now, Little Red," she began, glancing down at the crimson-cloaked teen perched on the rug by the fire. "This story belongs in no history book, but in the folds of your heart. Are you ready?" Little Red's wide brown eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Ready, Granny." And so, Gretel leaned forward, the firelight dancing across her face, and began to tell her secret version of the story. You've heard how Hansel and I found ourselves in the candy house after getting lost in the woods, haven't you? Red nodded eagerly, nibbling on a cookie. Well, that part's true enough. And yes, there was a witch. And yes, she had an unpleasant interest in baking children. But what no one ever tells is what the witch whispered to me when I managed to push her toward that hot iron oven. Red gasped, leaning closer. "What did she say, Granny?" Gretel's voice softened, and her gaze turned thoughtful. "She said, 'Thank you.'" "Thank you," Red exclaimed. Her cookie crumbs tumbled to the rug in disbelief. Gretel hummed, her lips quirking with a mysterious smile. Of course, I didn't know what she meant at the time. I thought she was perhaps trying one last trick. But when the oven door slammed shut and the house began to shudder, the most marvelous thing happened. Instead of the house burning down as you'd expect, it transformed. Red blinked in astonishment. Transformed. The candy walls melted away, Gretel explained, her hands twitching in the air as if unspooling an invisible thread. The licorice beams became elegant arches. The gumdrop roof turned to crystal. And suddenly, the house wasn't a house at all. It was a library. A magical library, filled with every kind of book you could imagine. Red's jaw dropped. So the witch wasn't just a witch. Exactly, Gretel said, her eyes twinkling. Turns out, she was a guardian of knowledge, keeping the world's most precious story safe. Hers was a thankless job, and somewhere along the way, she grew bitter, even cruel, forgetting her purpose. But in her final moments, she passed her duty to me. That's incredible. Red's voice rang with excitement. But wait, where's the magical library now? Do you still visit it? Is it nearby? Granny Gretel chuckled, pulling out her knitting needles. Oh, who says it's only one library? The forest is alive with them. Every ancient hollow tree, every moss-covered cave, every unexpected door leads to a hidden treasure trove of stories. If you listen carefully, you might even stumble on one yourself someday. Red sat back, her hands clutching her knees as an idea bloomed in her mind. Granny, she said slowly, I think I'd like to try finding one. A library, I mean. Maybe even tonight. Gretel grinned, waving her knitting needle toward the door. Then you'd better wear your sturdy boots. The forest has ways of testing adventurers, you know. Red leapt to her feet, fastening her beloved crimson cloak. The warmth of the cottage lingered on her skin as she stepped outside. The cool forest air wrapping around her like an adventure's embrace. And as she wandered deeper into Elderwilda, her boots crunching softly on the leaf-strewn path, Red began to notice something extraordinary. The shadows between the trees didn't seem so dark. In fact, they almost glowed, faint and golden. The wind carried whispers like voices from a distant dream. Her heart quickened as she rounded a bend and found a peculiar sight, a door. Not attached to a house, mind you, just a simple wooden door, framed by towering oaks under a silver moonlight. It stood there as naturally as if it had grown from the earth itself. Red hesitated, then reached for the handle. When she turned it, the door creaked open, revealing not the tangled forest beyond, but endless rows of books stretching up into a starry sky. A tiny figure hovered nearby, a sprite, glowing with a pale blue light, clutching a quill. Welcome, it chimed, its voice like wind chimes in the breeze. Are you here to find your story? Red stepped inside, her awe turning into a mischievous grin. Actually, I think I'd like to find all the stories. Where do I start? The little sprite giggled, gesturing to the shelves. And as the magical door clicked gently shut behind her, Little Red knew she was walking into a life of cozy, thrilling discoveries. Back in her cottage, Granny Gretel glanced toward the forest through her kitchen window, a knowing smile on her lips. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for the world to discover its stories anew, one twist at a time. Wow, wasn't that first story a warm hug of nostalgia and imagination? But hold onto your cloaks, because the next tale is about to get a little darker and a lot more mysterious. If you've ever wondered what happens to the characters after, happily ever after, this next one will give you chills in the best way possible. Let's head deeper into the woods for a tale where danger, curiosity, and a touch of magic collide. Keep that lantern close. You might need it. Shadows in the enchanted forest. Once upon a time, in a kingdom forgotten by maps and memory, the great Mistwood Forest loomed like a wall of emerald and shadow. It was said that all the fairy tales ever whispered to children's ears began within its depths. And though the outside world only heard fragments of those tales, the forest remembered them all, except, perhaps, the parts that didn't end the way they should. In the dim glow of an early dawn, a young woman named Briella crept through the forest, driven by desperation. Her older sister, Eleonora, had vanished days ago, leaving behind only a hastily folded note. To save our family, I must find the lost glass slipper. Do not follow me. The lost glass slipper was a legend for children, a token from some bygone Cinderella. It was said that whoever wore the slipper could turn back misfortune. Crops that failed would regrow, lost heirlooms could be found, even an ailing heart might be mended. Rumor claimed it had been hidden deep within Mistwood long ago by a jealous witch. Most dismissed it as nonsense. Briella, however, could not ignore the old magic of stories, nor could she ignore the worry that had nested in her heart. Eleonora was brave, but the forest was treacherous. Armed with nothing but a lantern, a dagger, and her sister's courage, Briella ventured into Mistwood. The trees were ancient and towering, their bark worn smooth as if countless hands had pressed upon them. Silence hung heavier than the mist, except for the occasional rustle that made her tighten her grip on the dagger. It was not long before she came across something extraordinary. A cobblestone path, winding like a serpent deeper into the forest. Bits of glass glistened in the moss beside it. Following the trail of glass shards, Briella soon stumbled upon a curious sight, a gingerbread house. Its icing had turned brittle, the candy roof tiles dulled and cracked. The door hung ajar. Inside, a cauldron bubbled slowly over a faint fire. A gaunt figure bent over it, a woman with wild silver hair, barely held together by a fraying ribbon. The woman's back stiffened as Briella stepped closer. "Come for the slipper, have you?" Her voice croaked, sharp as splintered wood. Briella froze, her heart pounding. How How do you know? Not the first. Certainly not the last, the woman interrupted, turning to reveal eyes as milky as a winter moon. But none ever return from where it lies. Briella swallowed her fear. I'm not leaving without my sister. The old woman's lips curved into a small, unsettling smile. Bravery. Rare these days. Very well, then. If you seek the glass slipper, you must go to Mirror Lake. But beware things forgotten have a way of remembering. Before Briella could press her further, the old woman raised a bony finger and pointed through the window. A distant glimmer shone in the far depths of the forest, faint and cold like the flash of a blade. It had to be Mirror Lake. Thank you, Briella said, though her gratitude was wary. The woman said nothing more, turning back to her cauldron as if Briella no longer existed. The journey to Mirror Lake was long. Shadows moved like living things among the trees, and Briella swore she heard whispers carried by the wind. They spoke her name in hushed tones, accompanied by faint giggles that made her skin crawl. Yet she pressed on, the glimmer of the lake guiding her like a star. When she finally arrived, she was struck by its eerie beauty. Mirror Lake glowed with an unnatural silver light, perfectly still and reflecting the sky with impossible clarity. On its shore stood her sister, Eleonora, clutching the famous glass slipper. It sparkled, seemingly untouched by time. Eleonora, Briella cried, relief flooding her chest. Eleonora turned slowly, her face pale and expression unreadable. Briella, you shouldn't have come. Her voice trembled, but her hands clutched the slipper tightly. What's wrong? Did something happen? Briella stepped closer, but her sister took a deliberate step back. You don't understand. Eleonora's voice cracked. This slipper wasn't hidden by a witch who wanted to protect it. It was hidden to trap those who sought to use it. It feeds on desperation. Once you hold it, you can't let go. Briella's heart sank like a stone. We'll figure it out, she insisted. We'll break the spell. We always do. Just drop it. Eleonora laughed, but tears streamed down her face. It's not that simple. The world feels like it's falling apart. But this thing, it whispers promises. Things too tempting to ignore. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the lake itself. It wore a cloak of rippling water, and its face was ever shifting, a kaleidoscope of sorrowful expressions. The being's voice was neither male nor female, but all-encompassing, like the sound of the lake given words. The slipper binds the desperate, it intoned, and it will not release her unless another takes her place. Briella felt her blood run cold. Don't, Eleonora shouted, backing away from her sister. Briella, don't listen. But Briella's mind raced. Could she fight this creature? Could she trick it? The dagger at her side felt useless, and the shimmering lake seemed to grow darker with each passing moment. Finally, she made her choice. "You want another desperate soul," Briella said, stepping forward. "Fine, take me." "Briella, no," Eleanor shrieked. The watery figure tilted its head, studying her. Then, with a sweep of its cloak, the glass slipper floated from Eleanor's hands to Briella. It was feather-light, but pulsed like a heartbeat. A strange, soothing warmth crept up her arm, and only then did she notice Eleonora was free, gasping on her knees, as if air had only just returned to her lungs. The lake being receded, sinking back into the waters. "The tale continues," it said, voice hollow and distant. Its disappearance left the sisters alone, the forest eerily quiet once more. "No," Eleanor whispered, stumbling toward Briella. "Give it to me. I can't let you." Briella shook her head, gripping the slipper tightly. "No, we walk out of here together. But you can't just. Together, Eleonora." Though tears blurred her vision, Briella helped her sister to her feet. The whispers in her mind began immediately, promises of fortune, strength, and endless possibilities. But she gritted her teeth. As far as she was concerned, the tale wasn't over, not yet. Not if she could rewrite its ending. And that's a wrap on today's tales, adventurers. We hope these reimagined fairy tales sparked your imagination, and maybe even made you see these beloved stories in a whole new light. Whether it was the cozy magic of rediscovering stories in hidden libraries, or the pulse-pounding mystery of a cursed glass slipper, there's always more to these worlds than meets the eye. If you loved these twists, or want to share your own ideas for how fairy tales could change, drop a comment below. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single story. Until next time, stay curious, stay adventurous, and keep the magic alive. See you in the next one.